Here we have In the Hold by a British artist called David Bomberg. Now, how does it connect to Gertler's merry-go-round? Well, both were contemporaries, Gertler and Bomberg. They were both alumni of the Slade art school, though Bomberg was expelled for being too radical, too much of a hothead. In fact, he even hit his tutor over the head with his palette when he criticised his work. Quite like David Bomberg. And I like both paintings. Both of them are big, and they personally stopped me in my tracks when I saw them. In this case, in the National Gallery, only in a little side room, just before coronavirus ruined everything. In fact, the only thing it was bothering in those days was the trade in nearby Chinatown restaurants. I know that because after I saw the painting, I went and had a Peking duck. Let's have a look at it. No, I mean, let's have a look at the painting, not the duck. Here it is. And another one, and another, and another, and another, and another. Yeah, I got a bit carried away, to be honest, but it's just such a wave of colour. It's a joy to stand in front of. Looks a bit like patchwork, or I think with those thick grid lines, almost like grouting. It looks like some tiling. It's like something you might see on the floors of Soho House. And the grid gives it a structure, but at the same time it's totally chaotic. But that's the point. This is organised chaos. Like Gertler, Bomberg is the son of some Polish Jewish immigrants, and the painting is perhaps alluding to the idea of immigrants coming on a boat, so either getting off the boat or being bundled down into the hold as human cargo. Now, if you can't see that when you look at it, it becomes a lot easier to see when you see the study for the final piece. So here you can see the ladder on the right hand side of the image, and there's a hatch down to the bows of the boat. And I see people coming up out of the bottom of the boat rather than being pushed down and shut in it. So for me, it's a picture of opportunity and optimism rather than oppression. Because I really do think these are immigrants. I don't think they're dockers. I mean, take a look at the hat on this fella here, or the little beard on this guy. The trick here is when you then look back at the final piece. That chaos suddenly makes sense. The image from the study, the figures, the ladder, they're all still there. And it's like a magic eye picture, but instead of a dolphin or a UFO, we have these people bursting out into new freedom. And the style's perfect for that. The bustle, the colour, the noise. Sometimes this sort of modernist cubist work, which Bomberg was getting into, can look a bit dated to our eyes because it reminds me of really early bad computer graphics. Makes me think of Dire Straits with I Want My MTV. There's kind of box heads on those guys. But actually, when you look at it, there is movement here. There's some really rough edges. It has that human touch. So some of the paint lines just end almost like ripped paper. And what this does is when you stand back and look at it as a whole, it has this brilliant sense of movement. So it's movement and shattered life being chucked at you. It's an absolute masterpiece. I really love it. But the story behind it, I'm afraid, is perhaps not so optimistic. This was first shown in Bomberg's solo show in 1914, right on the eve of war. When you went in, you saw Bomberg's vision of the future. Lots of different paintings with lots of colour that say, this is what the future looks like. Modern, innovative, the machine age with just so many possibilities for Bomberg's generation. But of course, that didn't play out. They were robbed of it by the First World War. And Bomberg himself went off to fight in the Somme, witnessed the death of his friends and his own brother on the front. And unsurprisingly then, when he came back, he was something of a changed man. He went off to find himself, and I think did some beautiful work when he began to travel around places like Cyprus and Palestine and even the Soviet Union. Really gorgeous landscapes and portraits. When he came back, he became an art teacher at Borough Polytechnic. Borough Polytechnic isn't as we know it now. Borough itself wasn't oak flat whites. It was an area of extreme poverty, and the Polytechnic didn't offer any diplomas or any grants, so it really only attracted the most kind of devoted students. But one of Bomberg's students, incidentally, was Michael Andrews, a really fantastic artist who I hope we'll get to talk about one day. If we're playing artist bingo, then Bomberg hits the big one because he died in poverty. 66 years old in 1957. He's a real unsung hero of British art. He's been described as the most brutally excluded artist in Britain. The greatest modernist painter that Britain never quite had. Of course, people are idiots, so once he died, his stock rose and people started buying it. Now, it cost you about 10 grand to get a little Bomberg. If you wanted this one, you'd need deep, deep pockets. It's a painting that followed him round his entire life. Rolled up, taken from his studio, stored in his home in his attic. It was only unravelled and shared with the world after he died. And I think the world's a much, much brighter place for it.